and the loneliness. Even 25-year-old women said, it's really lonely without her, even though I'm glad that we broke up.
Oh, yes, yes,
right?
yes.
That you're so used to the time and the hope invested in this friend.
We are here with author SUSAN Shapiro Barash. You just wrote this book about female friendships called Estranged. And this podcast is about dating and we've talked about breakups. It was founded, like one of the impetus for the podcast was a breakup. But friend breakups hurt deeper. And so we've always wanted to go into female friendships in this topic because it can be like heaven and it could be hell, frankly.
There's no question, you're right. And 75% of the women, I interviewed a very diverse group of women, 150 for the book. And then I did another 111 for a questionnaire in the back. And 75% of the women ages between 20 to up to 80 and, different race, ethnicity, level of education, religion, all across the country. 75% said that it was harder to break up with a female friend than to break up a romantic relationship or a marriage.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because you're really choosing. You're like, I don't like you, and I don't want you in my life. Like, it's just a rejection of. There's so many levels of rejection. I feel like we expect relationships to not. Every relationship won't work out until one does. But there, breakups are like points of song and inspiration for movies But when you break up with a friend, it's just like, I don't like you in my life.
And everything has changed. In fact, the preface of the book is called "Has She Changed or Have I?" And that's such a salient point because we choose these friends. This is not like a family estrangement.
I love that you said that, yes.
And so we choose and we trust, and women hold the bar high in any relationship.
Yes.
A love relationship, a friendship for sure. And we think that the men or any partner comes and goes. We think that children grow if you have children. But, you can be single, you can be partnered. It doesn't matter because we always have our female friends.
Yeah.
So this best friend forever idea has been really something we're convinced is right. And that's not the case.
What kinds of toxic friends can one encounter? You named a couple, like the green-eyed friend and stuff. Like, so can you go through?
We all know who that is.
Yeah.
So I start with the faithless friend, and that's a friendship that's going just fine. And then a third party or an event in your life that's so different, then the status quo changes it. For instance, you fall in love with someone. That partner doesn't like your friend, or how about your friend doesn't like that partner?
It's so stressful.
So it's, stressful, triangulated. Or you are moving to San Francisco and you've changed politics, another chapter. But you have changed in a way that it gets in the way, and now there's a tension in the friendship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think a lot of times, much like we attract a toxic romantic partner to relive some unhealthy dynamic from our parents, I have a matching tattoo with a woman I don't talk to anymore. So,
but the idea that you tattooed it, you thought it was for
BFF.
There you go.
BFF
right.
forever,
Exactly.
forever. And it was so toxic, and we both took place in the toxicity dance for sure. But
was there a particular relationship in your life that inspired you to want to write this book?
Yes, I'll admit, full disclosure.
Let's get into the tea. Let's spill it, Susan.
A few where I said to myself, why did this start on such a high note? Why have I been betrayed? And so through the book, although I have all the other stories, I do thread the winner of among the toxic friends for me personally.
Can we go through that for you? Like what type of toxic friend were they, and when did you recognize the signs?
It took me a very long time. Mm-hmm. It took a lot of self-awareness, like looking in a mirror and saying this is the truth, to let it go. And that's the question that so many women had to answer and, did answer, but had to face in this book. And that is, why do I stay with this friend who is actually dangerous for me, harmful?
Mm-hmm. And do you, like, in those types of situations, like, do you recommend, like, not blaming, because blaming doesn't do anything. Blaming's shameful, and that goes down a bad path. But like taking personal responsibility for like being in that friendship. Like I think that's the most jarring part of like how I thought you were the shit and I was not correct.
We are both responsible in this dyad, but definitely, and I label it, so the estranger is the one who leaves, and the estrangee is at the receiving end of the estrangement. But a lot of the women, and let me interrupt myself to tell you that I was really fortunate, and per chapter, I got one story, she said. So I got both sides.
Oh, nice.
And that was really fascinating because in a few of those stories, the women said, you know what, I'm lucky she left me, or I realize now we were not in a good place.
Yeah.
But the hanging on and the believing that it'll get better and the loneliness, even 25-year-old women said, it's really lonely without her, even though I'm glad that we broke up.
Oh, yes. Yes,
right?
yes.
That you're so used to the time and the hope invested in this friend.
And it's also confusing that you can have genuinely, I'm thinking about the friend I had, like such a good time together. Like you have your own secret language, you have all these inside jokes, and you genuinely are having fun together, and yet it's toxic. It's just very confusing.
It's a lot like a romance that goes bad.
Yeah.
Where there was such a high point and there was such expectation.
Right.
And you think that this friend, plus a lot of women said they were very worried about the secret shared. They said, I told her so much. She's the only one who knows.
Oh, I don't know what that's like. I tell
and
everyone
since
everything.
she did this to me, what did you say?
I tell everyone everything, so I'm like, ain't nobody got dirt on me.
Right, but that's really
I
how
didn't
they
even think
felt.
of that aspect, yeah.
Yeah, and then how about the friend who's hierarchical, where you're very important to her, but now she aspires to a different life, and you don't fit in, so those friends come first.
Oh, yeah. Like if they're different income, like I think it's
Money
still
has-
hard to
I
be friends with somebody who's like super rich. Like I'm not super rich, but like I had a friend like that in college. I'm like, this is difficult.
It's
You're too
really
rich.
difficult, and I actually have a section of the book called Friends with Money, because it just causes a wedge, especially if one of you has ended up having the money.
There's a way to work around that. That's like there has to be a way to work around that. That's authentic and real, right? Like just talking about it. Like there has to be a world.
It's not happening so much, and I'll tell you why. So here's the deal. I started this book. My mother died 7 years ago, and when she died, it was a time where I really saw which friends were there for me because I was so brokenhearted, and which friends, surprisingly, were not. So that was a lesson. So I pitched it to my agent, and we talked about it, and then she said, I write fiction under a pen name, Susanna Marin. She said, well, you have to write your Palm Beach novels. Those are due. So I put it aside. Then COVID came, another time to wake up and realize what relationships count and which ones don't, and who did what. And then I finally got back to it, handed in the novels, and it was 2 years ago when I started to interview. I had only interviewed about 25 people, women, before I started, just 2 years ago. By then, everything had changed. And this is what's so interesting. Because of COVID, I think that people were able to measure differently what really matters to them in life. So instead of wanting to estrange, maybe having the guts to estrange 7 years ago when I started to look at this, women were now saying, you know what? I feel this is a positive measure. Not that it wasn't hard to do, not that it doesn't cause grief or loss, but I feel empowered doing it, and that's a new trend.
That's a new trend. That's interesting.
That's definitely trending.
Yeah.
Because, as I said 7 years ago, women were saying, I feel like I failed. Good girls don't leave their friends or do something, although we do. But we're pretending.
Yeah, I mean, letting go of people in general, and this not just includes like friendship relationships, but also parental relationships. That's been a big topic online. Like it's entered the zeitgeist in a way that it absolutely did not exist, even I would say 10 years ago.
To leave family
to be estranged from your parents.
Family. Yeah. Well, when I pitched this book, family estrangement has always been in the ether, and books are published about it, and even taught in sociology classes, but nothing on estrangement with female friends, more like, gee, my best friend and I carry each other, more positive. What would I do without that friend?
Yeah.
But the other side of that is, can you believe she did that? So that's what I'm writing about.
Huh. Right.
And I mean, did you talk at all? I mean, or compare it all to the male friendships? I mean, or are men's friendships just not complex enough to even have a discussion about leaving?
See, you answered your own question.
Yeah,
Of course,
I mean, I kind of knew the answer, but I was just like,
right.
I'm just wondering.
No, it's a good question. Sometimes, in my book tours for my nonfiction, I'm asked, and what about men? And I say two things. I say, a book on this topic for men would be a pamphlet. Mm-hmm. And I say, in a patriarchal culture where we live and will die in a patriarchy, there aren't the same expectations. There isn't the same multifaceted aspect to the male condition or to the male journey.
Right.
So we're looking at how women navigate a path in a culture where they're judged constantly.
Yeah.
We're judged constantly.
Going back to your mother passing away and you realizing your friendships, I'm so interested in that because I've heard Corinne talk about that a lot. Like, wow, you really know who when a parent dies, you kind of know who, and I've since kind of heard it echoed by a lot of people, and I think it's so that's, to me, seems like almost par for the course. Unfortunately, when you lose a parent, is like you also see this, like, which friendships hold up and which don't. And I'm curious for your personal experience, like, how are people there for you in a good way, and how are people there for you in a way that was detrimental to you? Or not there, I guess.
The friends who showed up and kept in touch in those very dark months that followed, which unspeakable pain, I thought, really unbearable. Those who were there, and then the friends who didn't show up at all.
Did you reach out to them, or did you say anything to them, or just not have the energy?
No, it just made me think that I needed to investigate it. For every book that I write about, how women are positioned in contemporary American culture, I'm looking for that book in the bookstore. For example, when I was 23 years old and I was getting married for the first time, I went to the bookstore for a mother-in-law, daughter-in-law book.
Aww.
And I couldn't find it. And so years later, 3 children later, by then I had a lot of friends. Oh, and that let me interrupt myself. The like with like of it. Women love to have mirroring friends. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're single and still working in the city? I too. Oh, we have friends in the suburbs. They're now bonding. Mm-hmm. Oh, we both have babies. Oh, we both got divorced. Whatever it is. And as women get older, because longevity being what it is, women are always mirroring each other in these new phases, right? So here it is with this mother-in-law book. By the time I wrote it, I had and researched it, again, a diverse pool of women. I had so many friends who had mother-in-law stories of their own. And it was, I thought, a very necessary book. And by the way, whenever I toured for it, like 90% mothers-in-law showed up and only 10% daughters-in-law. Because it's exactly what my conclusion was, which is daughters-in-law I don't want any mothers-in-law on this listening.
Your findings are your findings.
Daughters-in-law don't care as much about it working, as, say, because I've been around a while, I was a very dutiful daughter-in-law. Mm-hmm. But the daughter-in-law today says, your mother? No, sorry, you take the kids over. Or your mother, you go have dinner with her.
Oh, didn't even want to hang out.
Yeah, so it's shifting.
Okay.
And so, that's who showed up to hear me, the mother-in-law who wanted more.
Aw.
Well, because I think a lot of daughters-in-law, like modern daughters-in-law, almost have been sold this story that the mother-in-law is almost like a competition, and like you're both in competition for this one man's attention.
Which is weird.
Totally true.
And
it's a real triangle. There's no question.
It feels like a love triangle, but like one's the mom, so it's weird.
So that's illegal.
So we're weirded out.
Well, there are all
by
these
it.
red flags.
Right.
Like if you are buying a house and your husband calls his mother when he hears that the offer's accepted instead of you, like calls her first.
I would leave
but these are
immediately.
But that was a great study. So anyway, the books that I'm looking for are books that I haven't really seen. I did 3 studies on the role of wife, but I did do a book on female friendship in the early 2000s called Toxic Friends, the antidote for women stuck in complicated friendships. And what was interesting about that book and that study was that women were really trying to heal it.
Yeah.
And so again, as the research continued, and then, this book, women are saying something very different. The shape-shifting is very real.
Do you think it's like people are more mindful of their own inner peace?
And self-preservation.
Yeah.
And more self-reflection. Like, you really have to ask yourself, what do I get from this friendship and what do I give?
Like, honestly, a pros and cons list will take you a long way. That can actually really, that's such a simple thing that can help you through life. Because you're like, oh, seeing all of these anxieties that this friendship brings me versus the good times, it's so outweighed that this doesn't, like, if you take your emotion out of it, which is tricky in these situations, but if you do, you can think logically and go, oh, this doesn't make sense. I'm not getting the gains.
But the reason it is so emotional is often historical. So even women in their 20s said to me, well, we were in kindergarten together. We were college roommates.
Yeah.
Our mothers were very good friends. We have this history already. And then, of course, older, go up every decade, you'll hear these excuses for why we stay with the friend.
Yep.
Yeah.
And yet, trust, a breach of trust and some sort of betrayal is a very big deal. So that chapter, since you asked about chapters, the thieving friend was a really sort of juicy chapter because the stories were amazing. I mean, some women, all ages, stealing a partner. They're, stealing such a...
What the fuck is at the root of that?
Such
that is
a
terrible.
no. But you would, I know, it's such a betrayal.
That is like epic betrayal.
It's like
we've
fairly
gotten emails.
common, though.
No, we've gotten emails about that. I'm like, girl,
very common.
How did you handle that? I had a roommate, old roommate in college once who, oh my God, she lost her best friend and her boyfriend. I'm like that because her best friend and her boyfriend hooked up and are dating. They're still dating, I think.
You just have to always date people that no one else are interested in, and that's how you
that's
really,
the key.
That's how you solve that.
It's a much safer, idea because once that happens, and then the women who felt very burned in the thieving friend chapter spoke of how this is sort of what we say in romances. How can we ever find someone after what we have endured?
Right.
Same deal.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure I can ever trust another female friend. So I heard a lot of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also think too, when two women get mad at each other, I've tried to make a joke about this on the stage for a while, but like I've observed my girlfriends with sisters, they have the most epic fights I've ever seen in my life. Like I have been present for it. I had a very mentally ill mother who would fight with my dad and it was awful, but like I've never experienced the intensity of as I have with witnessing my girlfriend argue with her sister. Like, and the I have multiple friends like this. There's something about like, and when I get mad at a woman, I get mad, and I don't know
why. But what's usually the cause?
It's very rare that I get mad at like a female friend though. That's the other thing. It's like, it's not very often, but it's betrayal, manipulation usually. Like if I find out, oh, you've been manipulative and I didn't catch it until now, I get very mad.
But one of the reasons, years ago, I did a study on female rivalry called Tripping the Prom Queen. And
Great title.
Yeah, I like the title too. Thank you. And in that book, I really looked at how, again, the patriarchal culture very much feeds into women just competing with one another.
For sure.
And we've internalized the male gaze and all that stuff.
And thinking, I just saw an article somewhere, just like in the last day or two, about what beauty, the whole beauty culture and what it does to women. Yeah. And I was thinking as I read it, well, where does it come from? If you want to look great for your friends, fine. But if you feel, if you're objectified, but, if you're doing it to look good to attract a man, that's from Neanderthal times, and it's also just it's distressing, it's discouraging.
Yeah.
So it's for two different reasons. But in terms of female rivalry, and we do compete for all the glittering prizes, and so do female friends, can be very competitive, and I look at that in the Green-Eyed Friend chapter. So anyway, what we're really doing is we're up against so much from the beginning because of the limited goods that's been applied to us. We live in a world of not enough pie.
Yeah,
so we're always competing in any situation, and there's this sense that if she gets it, I can't get it, like there's not enough to go around.
Yeah.
And so that also comes into the friendships too, if the friends are very competitive or very jealous.
I feel for people who haven't experienced. I have friends. That one friend that I don't talk to anymore is from high school, but I have like a lot of friends that I still talk to from high school. But it's like I want every person, man and woman, to experience that type of friendship. And I have a bunch of them that you just get so pumped when a success comes your friend's way, like you as if it's your own. You're just like so happy for them.
That's so authentic.
Yeah,
that's what we're looking.
And it's,
we're looking
and it's
for
very
the authentic
possible.
friend.
Yeah,
it certainly is. But you have to have enough in your own life. You have to work on yourself in order to be truly happy. And some women aren't.
Yeah, I think if you're used to this baseline of feeling like shit, basically about yourself, about your life, about where you're headed, then a friend coming in and treating you like shit isn't going to ring any alarm bells because this is your baseline.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, I want everybody to experience a friendship that's just like, oh, you got that job? Fuck yeah, I knew you could do it. Like that kind of support is like, once you have that, you'll never go back.
Right. And surprisingly, women don't do that enough.
Yeah.
Women of all ages in this book are really looking at their friends' achievement as somehow they're missing out. We can't feel like we're missing out. We do have to be there. That goes back to my mother. When my mother died, I knew who was there in a time of great sorrow, but also a time of great joy. The friends who, and women reported on that. I had the best, like you just said, I had the best news, and my friend wasn't really thrilled for me.
Yeah.
So jealousy is age-old.
Yeah. And that's always some internal stuff. Well, if a friendship is toxic, can it be saved?
So do women really sit down and have that conversation that's so common when you leave a love partner, where you say, let's sit down and talk about, can we save this? Women don't really like doing that with the friendship.
And why do you think that is?
I think that women don't really like conflict, and they don't like confrontation. And who knows if that's innate.
Also, too,
or
like,
if that's the culture telling us that we have to be good girls, and that would be not confrontational.
Right.
I when I left that friendship that was like 15 years long, I just blocked her and never talked to her again. It wasn't even a conversation.
So that brings us to another good point. Why is ghosting so common?
Yeah.
Ghosting is so common among female friends.
That's so interesting. Yeah, and that leaves so many unanswered questions that really rip away at somebody's like psyche almost. Like we get a lot of emails about like men, both in a romantic sexual sense and in a friendship sense, of like they just stop talking to me. And it's like, here's the thing. There's a million reasons why. So,
well, it makes you question yourself. Mm-hmm. And you say, well, what did I do wrong? And that's actually changing too, where women aren't so much saying, what did I do wrong? Instead, they're saying, you know what? She did something that really isn't acceptable to me. So more empowered.
Yeah.
But the ghosting and also the slow fade and the icing. Mm-hmm. So women say, they're suddenly just like not hearing, they're pushed out. The real problem with this is that so many women belong to a group of friends.
Okay.
So you jeopardize your whole status if you really have to leave one of the women within the group.
Right.
And women don't like doing that.
Yeah.
So
it is inconvenient.
Yeah, it is. And you wonder
now we can't bring Tara because Ashley's pissed.
Right, exactly. Right. And also then you say to yourself, why should I leave her and get punished and pushed out? Mm-hmm. So at the same time, women are estranging more than ever.
From friendships.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and has there, like, as a variable, has technology, I feel like, presents this variable because it's it's like harder to get rid of friends now. Like
it is.
I mean, for lack of a smoother way to put it, yeah. I mean, I actually would let go of many more friends if not for Instagram.
I know.
It's just too much. It's like honestly just easier to talk to them intermittently at this point than to go through a conversation, because I don't really like ghosting. I've ghosted a couple men, but when I was thinking about the reason I ghosted them, it's because I had expressed to them my problems with the relationship so many times. It had fallen upon deaf ears, and I was like, well, we just can't have this conversation anymore, so you're just getting blocked. But it's not like I just made a ghosting out of nowhere. I had attempted to have the conversation, and they were just unwilling to have it. But I don't think I've ever ghosted a woman. So I'm like, yeah, I'm just honestly like easier to have a conversation or chat with them pleasantly every couple of months than to
But to
let go of
distance
them.
yourself, you're saying that you're not there in the same
I'm not
way.
that close to anyone, so I guess there's no real distancing. That's just the kind of person I am, to be
Corinne from
honest. So
What about you?
So that one friend that I stopped talking to, I let her know. I'm like, hey, you are being so disrespectful to me over this, and it was just more of a. I got so tired of walking on eggshells about like she would be mad at me and wouldn't tell me. So I didn't know. And then she would be mad that so much time passed that I didn't know why she was mad at me.
Right.
And I'm like, now you're just punishing me for, this is so out of my control. I couldn't blame myself if I tried. So it's very clear to me and then it's just like I had a very emotionally abusive mother. So it was the same, it's twinning. It's the same thing.
Oh, it felt the same.
It's the same. It felt the same. So it didn't feel weird. When all my other friends were like, this is a weird friendship you guys have. You're weird. And she would criticize me like she was my parent.
So I have a chapter on the critical friend, and also on the one who's disrespectful, because that really bothers women. It's such a terrible
because we get
feeling.
criticized for everything, and it's like
by
a friendship
society nonstop.
A friendship
You're
is
like,
a
oh
safe
my God.
space. Like, and if I ask you for criticism, that is a completely different that's a completely different vibe. But if it's unsolicited, like. But also I look at too, like I always try to look at if I can have emotional distance from it. What are they going through? So like that critical friend, I've had them, I've witnessed them. I'm like, ugh. But it's so obvious to me that friend just hates themselves. I can't blanket. That's the reason for everybody.
You start to really understand that she has a problem in some cases, but at the same time, you also know for your own self-preservation, you have to estrange.
gotta
And
get
that's
out.
something women are coming to now. You know what's a very new happening with these friendships is where the friends have opposing views.
Oh, yeah.
Politically, about vaxing, about how to raise children. But what's different is that it now is enough to cause a breakup.
Interesting.
Before, women would say, oh, you think that way, you voted this way. It's okay. Not since COVID. I think that COVID just unleashed again such really, you look at it this way, I look at it this way, it's not the same. And,
Right.
and
People
that
got
wasn't like,
radicalized.
and then politics the last two elections. That's really been a
I
very
know
big
people in my
deal
life
too.
that have lost friends because of that.
A lot of people and family members too,
Yeah.
where you hear about it, and then in-laws.
Yeah, because it's like, it's not creating your own liberal bubble so that you're just an echo chamber, but some things are really difficult to see past in terms of like, a man in my life who I'm related to voted for a guy that says grab him by the pussy. That might not be what he's thinking about when he voted, but that's what I'm thinking about. So it's like, everybody's own personal experiences come into play.
It's really, this change of values when two friends thought they were the same and now they're disparate it's a really big deal. And that's enough to cause estrangement as well.
Have you ever had a friend that you've had different values?
Yes, I
By that smile, I'd say. Yes.
I have, and
How'd that go?
I made a decision. Oh, since we're talking about my beloved mother today, I remember one of the last things my mother said, like the week before she died. She said to me, "And how can you stay friends with those friends who have voted a certain way?" And I said, "Mom, I'm overlooking it." And she said, she could have been in this book. She said, "No one can overlook that. It's different now." So yes, I have friends who have different values, and if they mean so much to me, I've made the decision to stay.
Yeah.
But what I couldn't stay with was a friend who wasn't really on my side.
Totally.
For me personally, that is more significant. A friend who's really not rooting for me, and that jealousy that you can feel, it's in the ether, that I don't want in my life anymore.
Yeah.
everybody wants something different out of a friendship, right?
Yes and no.
Like kind of.
I
Like,
want someone with a boat.
Well,
yeah, I want someone with a lake house.
Going to summer, main thing I'm looking for is the person with a boat. Right?
oh, right.
but
A
we
very
never-
circumstantial friend.
But much like
Right.
you were saying that friend, when you break up with a friend, you don't have this conversation of can we save this? When you start a friendship, you also don't have the what are your values, and what you just kind of learn over time, and you just there.
Women make a lot of assumptions about romances and about friendships. You meet someone and you're attracted.
Yeah.
And it can be platonic, it can be more, it can be sexual. But the point is, we have to really listen and we have to really learn about the person. And sometimes you don't, one doesn't because she's so enchanted. And that's
Yeah.
very true with female friendships too, where we just go all
you can get
in
love
too
bombed.
quickly.
Yeah,
Of course.
in a female friendship for
Yeah,
sure.
because a lot of times we're attracted to people who are almost aspirational. I feel like there's two types of like female friendships. Like they're aspirational, like oh, I want to be friends with her because I want to be more like her, and then the other one is like, let me take her under my wing. Let me, it's like
the
it's
rhino
like,
at the end of the Jumanji parade.
Well, it's like Cher and Ty in Clueless. You're like, let's
yeah.
give this little gal a
Clueless, but
makeover.
Clueless is a very hierarchical,
Sure.
Cher,
Yeah.
because Cher is the it girl.
Yeah.
And they're so often the it girl. And then how does that make you feel? And what about if it changes and suddenly as time goes on, you become the
When
it
Ty
girl?
got the makeover and everyone paid attention to her,
Yeah.
Cher was like, I made you.
Well, and that's where I feel like, oh man, it always breaks my heart a little bit, but it's part of life of like that patriarchal society you were talking about. Women now see like we see ourselves through the male gaze, which is so exhausting. Like, we just have to make an effort to stop seeing ourselves through that. But it's like, yeah, when you have a friend who's like way hotter than you, that creates a thing. Like that's just like, and then you got to deal with that. And I feel like, yeah, the way people deal with these little changes in dynamic, there's so many layers.
But this book study is really about your closest friends
Yeah.
and your best friends. It isn't a circumstantial friend. It isn't the one who has the boat or the great house out east. And so we're really looking at as I said earlier, expecting so much from the friend. And it's really devastating when you lose that friend or that you have to lose her, even if you
Yeah.
come to that, which, like I said, is really empowering.
How do you get over a friend breakup?
You
How do
move
you
on.
heal?
You move on. You find new friends. You hope that you're wiser. You hope that you have more clarity. You try to understand what happened. Although a lot of women said, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened here.
Really?
It was just one day the friend stops talking
Yeah,
to
a lot of times, like if you sat on how you really felt for years, you're gonna kind of explode one day or implode, and it can take the shape of just.
What's for
See you never.
certain is that we all want female friends.
Yes.
That we go on with it and that we make friends in all the different ways that we lead our lives. So it could be Pilates, it could be work, it could be through a mutual friend, although sometimes that gets kind of tricky too, again, because of, who's more important here.
Absolutely.
So have we really evolved? Yes, but are women of all ages still struggling with the friend not being who she should be? Yeah, still happening, except now we can estrange.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking about
I was like going on
Going down memory lane,
a little
my own
internal
head,
journey there.
Yeah.
Did you? I especially at this age. So I'm 39. I feel like at this age for me, and this is not like being estranged on purpose, but I definitely feel a difference between my friends who have kids and then my friends who don't have kids. I feel like there is like an air of women who have kids. Like honestly, they look down on. Yeah, not on purpose, but they kind of think like my life is like silly and I have no responsibilities, and I'm like. I'm literally running for mayor.
so much fun.
That sounds pretty responsible to me.
I go, and so I think there's this like, there's almost like a bias that women have against ourselves, that there are set responsibilities that in society are considered respectable, and then other pursuits are almost frivolous. And like it is still like you're kind of like not considered like a female adult until you have the responsibility of taking care of kids. It still feels like that.
But that's because women are taught to judge one another, and that has to stop.
Yeah.
And we are so judged anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
So first we're judged, and then we judge each other. I don't know if we can stop the judgments that come from a male, long-taught application,
Right.
but we can certainly stop judging each other. And it's really true. You know, years ago, I was asked to speak, I still remember this, at Bayer Diagnostics, which was like a huge campus in Westchester. And before I went on the stage, I was asked to speak with all the very high up women there. And one of them said to me, you know, there are the Uber mothers in my town, and I'll never forget this. And then there are the working mothers, and we don't understand each other.
Yeah.
That has to stop.
Right.
Wait, what's the difference? Uber
She was
mothers
saying, well, then she used Uber before there were Ubers.
Like the moms who's always there.
Yeah,
at
the
pickup.
mothers who are
Always
so
ready.
perfect.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if you remember, but years ago there was a novel that came out in England and then the States, and then Sarah Jessica Parker made the movie. I think it was called I Don't Know How She Does It.
Okay.
And I remember like Greg Kinnear, and I'm just remembering the whole thing, and Pierce Brosnan was in it. But she has this incredible career, very high up, very corporate, and she basically lies to her male boss about, you know, what she needs to do so that she can go to her daughter's dance recital, her little girl. So everywhere we go, there are all these different judgments, and there's different expectations of women. So working women versus the mothers, and single women who I pitched maybe 5 times a book called Single by Choice. Never sold it. I wanted to do it from the 90s. I'm
Wow.
going to date myself.
But that's great. I mean,
But
it's so ahead of your time. And so
it was so. That's why.
true.
But
Yeah.
it was because it's so important. Or how about women who are divorced with children? They're
Yeah,
judged.
yeah.
So this mirroring, where we have to be exactly the same, really narrows our chances
Yeah.
at all these different friendships and also at all these different experiences. Women have to coalesce. We all have to work together to get where we need to be. Right.
How can we be kinder to each other, or how can we foster deeper friendships in our lives?
By really trying to understand one another and by embracing the choices other women make. Like the perfect example
Yeah.
is being a candidate for mayor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal. And you know, again, not getting political, but we've seen 2 women run for president.
Yeah.
And you know,
That didn't go well.
well, and
I thought they did a great job.
they did
but
a great job. No, of
America
course
made
they
it
did.
very clear that they don't want a woman president.
That's exactly what I say. And that's really troubling.
Yeah, it
because until we-
Overqualified women.
Yeah. It is really troubling. You're absolutely right.
and what's so hard to understand about that is the options don't come to us so easily,
Yeah.
and then we don't embrace them when
Yeah.
they do. So there's a lot going on, but it does actually. It's very personal, and then it's enormous. And the personal is about having healthy friendships and being the real friend to the friends too, not just, you know, what she did to me, but what have I done?
Yeah.
Because we know it
Personal
goes
responsibility.
like that. Yeah,
Yeah, it's always a
exactly.
two-way street for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, and I think we see like a little bit more. Like I follow accounts where people have, you know, like they have a baby shower, but they also have like a career shower. I follow this astronaut. Kelly, I forgot her last name, Kelly G something. It's like an Italian last name. But her mom is very supportive of all aspects of her life. And so, you know, astronaut Kelly is going through the IVF process and has a baby, and like all those things are celebrated. But her mom also like threw her a big shower for her next mission to space, which, you
That's
know,
huge.
But that's
so cool.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
enormous. And
yeah.
how many women get to space as astronauts?
Very few.
Katy
I know.
Perry.
Right, and we
Katy
think
Perry and Kelly.
Yeah.
and
Just them.
Yeah, so we need to see more women in top positions.
Yeah.
And in terms of women supporting women, which is I think, so important. I remember when Hillary was running, again, not being political, but when Hillary Clinton was running for president, I wrote an essay, and actually that came out called "Will Hillary Always Be the Prom Queen?" And why? And that's about why we don't support women or girls, because we're girls when we're prom queens.
Yeah.
And why we feel that an achieving woman is somehow robbing us, robbing us of an opportunity, when instead what it's really showing us is how much opportunity there is for us.
Yeah.
If we could only grab it.
Right, like exactly. It to me, when a woman achieves something, it's just another like, oh, look at all these things you can do. Look at all these options that you have, even options that maybe weren't even accessible or thought of 20 years ago. And that's what how I see it. But so many people, you're right, do see it as like, oh, it's almost like, oh, I didn't think of that, so I'm going to not support this person in her pursuit.
Yeah, and what it takes for women to achieve. And then it does go back to the friendships, because in one section of the book, women were saying, she and I have grown apart, but why not admire, a lot of times it's about work. I interviewed 2 women who had come here from another country. It's one of the she said stories in the book. So both sides. And they broke up. Of course, it was very inflamed. And we should talk about that if we have a moment. Like, sometimes it's just so incendiary, such a blow up.
Yeah.
It's not just ghosting. But they really did grow apart. So when they first got here, they were part of everyone who had, everyone else's from their country had come here, and it was almost clannish in a good way.
Right.
Yeah.
And then as time went on, they all grew apart and they all achieved what they achieved. But this one of the 2 friends really aspired to be educated, and she wanted a different experience, and she wanted to be married. The other woman felt that, there was no need to be married. So they grew apart over no longer mirroring or reflecting each other exactly. And in a way, they fell into that chapter, not having the same values anymore. But it just shows you that we have to be more open, more inclusive of a friend who
Has different values.
And
I think it's also more interesting.
Me too.
I don't want a
much
friend
more
who's exactly like me. I want to know what you're like. Are you married? You got a husband? What's that like? What's it like to sustain a marriage? I have one friend who has a husband who's had a husband since she was in her early 20s. And like her marriage is a really big part of her life, and like keeping it up and making sure like she like massages it and stuff. And like that's so interesting. I'm like, why would we want friends that are exactly like us?
But some of the women, when that happens in this study, complained, and they said, she has no time for me. She has 3 little children. Well, that's self-evident. She probably doesn't have time for herself.
For herself, right.
Exactly. Or a woman who says, I only want to be with friends who are in the workplace and are not living in suburbia, who live in a city, anywhere across the country. I really don't know. It would be awful to be in suburbia. But it's okay to have the city and the life you choose, and to still be friends.
Yeah.
So a lot of times women almost hold it against each other.
Oh, that sucks.
And it's not
that's
good.
So sad.
It has
That's
to
going
change.
to be internalizing too, the patriarchal stuff. That must be.
Yes, and the idea that 80% of the women in my study told me that they expected their friends to really kind of catch them during a terrible fall or something really sad that happened. And, that's really a high percentage, because we all have very complicated lives. So there has to be more give and take with that.
And and in those big moments too, like, you reach out to a friend who's going through something bad, but then like what if your life is just really busy and you forgot? Is that the friend's responsibility to go, hey, can I just call you to vent? Or is it your responsibility to go, hey, how you doing? I haven't talked to you in a minute. But then I can see like so many relationships where it's both friends think the other one's supposed to contact them first, and then no one says
And
anything.
then all this tension builds. What I did also look at in the book that I found really interesting is the fictive family. And a good example of that would be Sex in the City. Do you remember how those 4 women at all those restaurants, except for one mother-in-law, Miranda had a mother-in-law for a little bit, but everything that they gave and took from each other was family. There were no family members. No one had a sister.
Right. You never saw any Carrie's family.
No.
The
no
whole
one,
time.
No one. No one at all.
Never her dad died. No, Miranda's mom died. That was like one of the only instances.
I just remember Ann Mira, the actress, played the mother-in-law when Miranda marries Steve, or and unexpectedly has a baby. And that's a good example of the idea there's not enough pie. So poor Charlotte's going through all this to have a child.
Yeah.
She's very upset. And then they sit at the table one day, and Miranda says, let me paraphrase, but I didn't expect to have a baby, but I'm having a baby. And Charlotte says something like, but I'm having the baby.
Yeah.
Well,
for the
in
group.
theory, they can all have babies if they want. So the idea that magical theft still exists in all of our friendships and in our culture. So if a woman achieves a great deal, we say, well, she got it. I can't have it. We should say, she got it. I can have it too. We can all have it.
Yeah.
So that's what has to change from the French, ground up.
Yeah, a lack mentality can really make people behave in very ugly ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't blame them because I feel like the society just throws it on us a lot in a lot of ways.
It's so competitive, and there's a lot of suffering, personal suffering.
Yeah.
A lot of women feel that life is passing them by and maybe not their best friend. That just causes tension. So 2 ways that the friendships don't last and that people estrange. One is cumulative. Just enough stuff has happened that you finally say enough. Mm-hmm. It's just been repeated. It might be a different circumstance, but it's always the same end result. Or there's a big blowout fight where they just really end up where,
And those 2 women you said, she said had a big blowout fight. And you were like, what did that look like?
It looked like one of them really, really being cruel to the other. And they never spoke again. And so much regret from it. In the book, it's called Helen and Gabriella. So much regret coming from Gabriella and so much admiration for what was and the idea that it's finite and over from Helen.
Oh.
So that one was very poignant. And then there's one of this she said stories where the 2 friends were really, really trusted friends and everything was fine. Mm-hmm. And then one got divorced, young woman got divorced and started dating her best friend's brother. Big problem.
Oh.
Big
why?
problem.
Well, yeah. What's that problem?
She was just territorial over?
The brother was really incendiary. He created a lot of friction. And, she now said, instead of getting to be with my best friend, she's with my brother.
Right. It's not ideal.
And, it wasn't ideal.
Yeah, it's not ideal. Yeah.
And I also look at celebrity culture, and I look at, it's not just the interviews, but I look at literature, at novels where, the Elena Ferrante novels. And there is competition sometimes in even the healthiest friendships if the friendship can sustain it, if it works out well.
Well, there is called healthy competition.
Yeah, women aren't as good at as men. You asked me about men before. Men do competition better because,
I've always admired a man. A man can get punched in the face by another man and then minutes later help him up. A woman gets punched in the face by a woman, that woman is dead. Like that, the fury that arises. So there's less. I don't know if it's less forgiveness for women. I don't know.
Healthy competition is so hard to come by. It was, like I said earlier, it was very important to me to look at a diverse group of women. And so one day I interviewed, this was for Tripping the Prom Queen, I interviewed a group of women in the Midwest, and they had a bowling league, a very competitive bowling league. And the head of the league was explaining the problems. And then later I interviewed on how the women competed and how they, some were friends and some weren't. Then I interviewed, like in South Florida, a tennis league.
Yeah.
And they were much more privileged women, and they had the exact same problems.
Interesting.
So for all of
Archetypes.
these studies, exactly what women long for really has nothing to do with if you've gone to Harvard and have an MBA or you barely got out of high school.
Yeah.
If you're unhappy in a love relationship, if you're unhappy with your best friend, if your daughter's troubling or your work is not going well, it really doesn't matter. And we all long for the same things.
Yeah. Did you encounter a lot of women who were estranged because one of the women was dating someone and abusive?
I looked at abuse. You know what else I looked at? I looked at, in the Wayward Friend chapter, I looked at when one of the 2 friends in the dyad had a drinking problem or a drug problem
yeah.
or some kind of addiction, even gambling.
Yeah.
Yeah, any addiction. They're all the same. I mean,
and what it did to the best friend as the enabler.
the enabler.
And in the end, a lot of them said, I can't do anything more, and I don't think I'm even helping. But those are difficult situations.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. Did you have any other questions you wanted to ask? This has been such a great conversation.
So good to meet you both.
Yeah,
Thank
you as
you.
well. What an interesting topic to dive into.
And so I feel like we have to read all your books now. You're so prolific in the experience of women.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for doing the work that you do. We appreciate being here.
Thank you.
And so we just want to promote the book. Is you have a preferred place for people to pick it up? Your own website, or what's your?
Well, the book is sold, bookshop.org and Amazon, indie bookstores, and I love to hear from readers.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
And can they contact you via your website? Instagram?
Website is great. Instagram.
Awesome.
Amazing. Thank you so much
Thanks,
for being
Susan.
here.
Thank you.
This has been Guys We Fuck, the Anti-Slut Shaming Podcast. We'll talk to you next Friday. Thanks. Bye.